Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting of the Stormwater Committee to order, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Since we are having some people come in by Zoom, I need to do a roll call. So we're going to start with you, Lisa. Just state your name. Lisa.
Just speak up with the microphone only on the laptop.
Lisa Caledonia, Conservation Agent.
Timothy Ryan's Planning Board Member.
Bill Burnett, Conservation Commission.
Ferry Streets. Todd Pilling, Stormwater Agent.
Ralph Graffi, Office Manager.
Thomas Byers, Board of Health.
Nancy Goulart, Board of Selectmen. Thank you. Mrs. Grassi, if you would just keep an eye on the clock, so we have a 2 o'clock hearing so that we don't miss it. New business, Forest Hills Housing Development. Who would like to address this? First of all, I want to thank Mr. Rhines for the plans that we have here. I've got a complete set here. Anyone wants to look at it? This will be going to the planning board. Mr. Rhines, do you wish to address this?
Now, I'll address this, Madam Chairwoman. We received an application from DI Trust, who is the representative for Forest Hills Estates. This is a definitive conservation subdivision that will be possibly built on Forest Street in town. As it stands right now, we do have a scheduled public hearing for March 17th. Your butters have been notified of said meeting, and that's we're going to open it up on the 17th, and I do believe we're going to go into executive session before we even begin our meeting.
That'll be the first public hearing on this project.
That's correct. This will be the opening public hearing on March 17th.
Is the planning board planning on sending this out to review the drainage calculations?
Correct, we are.
Are there any questions? As I said, I have the plan here. I have the book, everything that goes with it. We have a copy that we can share. So if anybody wants to borrow it, I'm going to leave this with Mrs. Grassi. So if anyone wants to borrow it and look at it, just make sure you return it to her so that other committee members can borrow it if they have questions, okay? Mr. Agia, would you just state your name so we have the roll call and your position?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late. One phone call. James Aguiar Jr., building official, member of several subcommittees.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the Forest Hills housing development?
I just had one question, and it was on the planning board previously. Tom Byers speaking. And obviously the green space, the green is all the open space. Now, just so you can bring it up, and I don't want to get in debate here, I thought open space had to be contiguous. Correct, there is contiguous open space. I believe it is in the northwest section of that property above the development itself, which will be heading out toward William Street. Okay. Yeah, I'll wait for the public hearing and do my other. I would just like to make the statement so the residents of town do know this is not a 40B project where it's a guaranteed to be a guaranteed given as building. So, and again, this is not going to be a case if it were to be approved that they would just come into Dayton and build, 140 homes in 1 year. That's not allowable under our subdivision rules and regulations. So I just wanted to just, relay some of that information out to the general public.
This is a special permit.
Yes, this will be done by special permit.
So this is not a 40B.
No, this is not a 40B.
And they've got one entrance in and same exit out.
Yes, that's been a major contention of debate right now. I really don't want to get into too many issues because of legalities. And we're going to address as much as we can with the opening of the public
That said, I didn't mean to beat you up with this.
No,
And it's still preliminary. The plans I got in my office, there's no sidewalks. I don't think there's adequate parking for green space. We have roads, some are 20 feet, and we have some roads that are 60 feet of asphalt. So if you're gonna have drainage calculations reviewed and that stormwater is gonna enjoy those reviews, then that's a player in this committee. We, Dyton Woods, for example, there's not enough parking. I think they were wrong in the estimates of how many cars per big house. I know that's a 40B, but you take that in this plan to here, you don't have enough parking at all. I see a serious problem. Especially the 20-foot roads. There's probably gonna be no parking on the roads. I don't know how we're gonna institute that.
again, this is, there was a decision that was rendered by a judge in this matter, and we're just gonna leave it set as that until we just, reapproach this again, so.
And just so everybody knows, the sketch, I call it in, I'm the one that called that in, that wasn't the engineer, if I missed an open space or drainage basin, it was purely by accident. But you will notice there's a lot of yellow drainage basins out there, I think there's like 8 of them. So they're spreading the drainage out pretty good. I did not see on the plans that there were test pits done at the basins, so obviously we're gonna look at some test pits, but it looks like every one of these basins is pretty much above ground where they built them. And they're bringing in a lot of fill for all these houses to keep them all up, so it seems like they were going in the direction of stormwater committee like to see, at step one.
Basin of the eight is in town.
Yes,
Correct.
And that's the one that I saw the wording, the basin 8 with the homeowners association going to take care of. What happens to the other 7?
Correct. There's gonna be a lot of information provided with this going forward. There's also written out in the decision that I understand that since there's only the egress into the facility, that part of this facility does abut on, and it's a question of who is going to supply their water and sewer. And the question arises of who is going to have emergency services for these people that live in the subdivision. So that was part of the original decision that was rendered by the judge. So it's going to be pretty interesting.
Mr. Rhines, this isn't a stormwater question, but although this is not a 40B, will there be any affordable units in there?
I don't want to speak on behalf of the board, but I do believe that we need to take care of that in negotiations.
Oh, that'll be good if we could pick up a few. I mean, anything that would help towards our.
So that's something that we're going to look at in regards to the negotiations. We're undecided what the percentage is going to be and what's allowable in the law that we can go with as a maximum.
Okay, anything else on the Forest Hills housing? Anyone have any questions, comments, whatever? Okay, so we're going to move on to old business update on 170 Beach Street.
If I may, Madam Chairwoman,
Yes,
I had the opportunity to just take a ride down and just visually observe what's transpired down there at Beach Street. Now, the resident in 170, we see his issue, and we need to find out exactly where this water issue is coming from, and what is going to be our best terms to abate this situation to give that homeowner relief. So I'm sure that the highway superintendent's working along with, our agent, our health agent, as well as our building commissioner, and trying to rectify, whatever problems down there. But I'm sure that we all know from a past meeting that was held in regards to the town wanting to go with some engineers and possibly do a little work in there and pave the roads. And it turned out to be not a pleasant meeting. I mean, the residents were not very happy. So I can just imagine what's going to happen when a new set of engineers do go down and do a little engineering, shoot some grades and things. And what's going to happen down there, and what the word is that's going to travel throughout there. So I'm sure that with building commissioner, our health agent, and the highway superintendent, they'll be able to figure out some relief for this gentleman down there.
Well, for those at home, we had our site walk there this morning. We didn't discuss the project, but we looked at everything. And the owner of 170 Beach Street is in the process of doing septic repair. And so right now we're just waiting for water to go down so we can dig some test holes. But once the engineer's down there, we're gonna have them shoot some grades of the roadway and stuff like that and the water, so we have a better idea of what elevations we're dealing with to figure out which direction we want to be going. So at this point, we're still in data gathering mode. But it is definitely a problem that needs to be addressed.
Okay. Stagger,
I have two things to add. First, that particular homeowner pulled me aside this morning and told me that he has no problem paying for his septic upgrade, engineering and related engineering. He does have a problem paying for engineering required to deal with the water problem. So that's going to lead into a more difficult discussion that we need to have about what are we going to do with respect to alleviating this situation when it involves multiple properties. We know that this is further complicated by the fact that we don't own any of the roads. So the answer is not going to be simple. I also received a very lengthy email since our meeting this morning from one of the homeowners in Dyke Rock Park, saying that wished he could have been there to meet with us. However, he wants to thank the Stormwater Committee for addressing the situation down there and encourage us to find a way to alleviate the problem. He goes into further detail in saying that we should suspend the idea of bringing the water to the marsh and instead go the shortest route to Top River. But we all know that that may be not an option. Additionally, in the email, he also says the same thing about who's going to pay for it. And also reminds us that we're all Dayton taxpayers, which I actually agree with. So it's not going to be an easy charge of this committee to figure this out, but I think it's, we need to do something.
I have a question. Do they have any type of a homeowners association down there at all?
No.
Nothing on paper?
Mr. Ferry? No, is that a no comment?
He can reach me. We don't. Tom and I, for the first time, I think in 12 years, completely disagree about this. So.
Yes, they're Dayton residents, yes, they taxpayers. I don't think it's the burden of the town to get that property, so that's where we don't see eye to eye.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
They pay any lower tax rate versus anyone else who has access to town services? The answer is no. So therefore, I disagree. They're still Dayton taxpayers.
The problem we have, when a few years ago, there was an eruption because of a particular property that had many, many animals. There were problems with lights on all hours of the day and night, and animals going up and down the road and going onto other property and messing and so forth, so on. That resulted in a site visit, and there was adjustments made to the lights, so forth, so on. But at the time, the chairman of the Board of Selectmen felt the solution was to just have the town take all of the streets and take everything over. And one of the selectmen agreed with him. And we had a meeting at Town Hall that night, and all hell broke loose because the room was packed with residents. I was the selectman that said, absolutely not. It would cost this town millions of dollars to, first of all, take those streets, because it would have to be eminent domain. You would have to hire an engineer and a surveyor to lay everything out. And you'd have to go through the same process we do for a sidewalk project, which is quite relatively simple compared to what's down there. It was clear the residents didn't want any part of the town coming into their neighborhood. In talking to town council, he said the best thing to do is to have a bylaw, a minimum maintenance bylaw. So as things turned out, the resolution down there, working with Mr. Aguirre and Mr. Ferry, so forth, so on, the initial complaint was dealt with. The loose animals, and by the way, the backyard of that property was floating at the time. And the lights and all of the annoyances that initially set off all the neighbors. We looked into having a minimum maintenance bylaw. Now, this was going to be for other parts of town, like Winfield Lane, unaccepted roads. And what we do basically is, Mr. Ferry does, if snow reaches a level of 4 inches and it hasn't been plowed, even in some developments that hire their own companies, the highway department will go in and they will plow. And if it's a private homeowners association, they'll be billed for that because they're supposed to do it themselves. By the same token, the concern was you've got to keep the roads open for public safety. So that's why this happens. In the case of gravel roads, or especially the park in, let's say, Winfield Lane area, in addition to plowing and sanding and taking care of the roads in the wintertime, as needed, the highway department will gravel and grade the roads, period. We don't have a bylaw. When we looked into the bylaw, this was one of the goals of the former town administrator, and she couldn't do it. I looked into it. The biggest problem is when you look at all of the communities that have minimum maintenance bylaws for unaccepted roads, the bylaw requires the residents living in there to pay part of the cost. Well, part of the problem we got is there's no homeowners association. Nobody wants to spend money for those roads. They just want the town to keep them open and grade them as needed. And that's worked, except when you run into a situation like this. There's some kind of a drainage problem, and we're trying to determine what it is. The town has no authority to go onto that property and dig up roads and put in pipes and all that other stuff. By the same token, the reason why I'll call it the unwritten minimum bylaw, the unwritten or the practice that the town has followed when it's 4 inches of snow or when it needs grading and gravel, it's kind of like came out of a previous board of selectmen that said what Mr. Aguirre said, they pay taxes. They don't get a tax break or anything else. There is town water down there. But in the situation we're dealing with is, yes, they pay taxes. Yes, they pay taxes at the same rate as the rest of us. And maybe some of the waterfront ones are even, the rates are higher. I should say the tax bills would be higher, not the rates. But legally, town council has said to us, without a bylaw that allows you to do that, you really don't have the authority. Obviously, the common sense thing is make sure it gets plowed and make sure just got to make sure those roads can be used by emergency vehicles. And that's basically what the town's been doing. When we went through that whole thing, looking at bylaws and I mean, some practically have booklets of everything to do. They all have money attached to them, which means the people down there, they'd have to agree to this, and you're going to have to, first you've got to pass the bylaw, then you got to assess them the amount of money that they would have to pay, a percentage. The assessment of the money is that was the thing that stopped us from going further with it. And so the goal to have a minimum maintenance bylaw is still there, just that we can't figure out how to accomplish it because the minimum maintenance bylaws that are on the books also quote state statute, and even in state law, there's reference to people who live in those areas contributing. So it's a nightmare on both sides.
What's our best remedy for relief?
We're still trying to figure that out.
So there's an engineering study coming up, right?
Correct. The problem is, based on this morning's visit, the owner who's paying for the septic upgrade repair is now questioning all of these requests from our stormwater agent, which are prudent to figure things out, the elevations of certain things. He says, well, who's paying for that? I'm not paying for that. And now he says, look, we want to get the problem fixed, but the problem isn't just me. The problem affects other people. So why should I bear the cost of all of that? Of course, I didn't answer him because I don't have an answer, but it's a legitimate question on his part.
Well, what I was saying is we're gonna get the elevations of each street and mark out, because he's gonna do that as part of the septic system, and that'll get us some information. And I just figured as long as they were set up, they could get us the elevation of Pleasant Street of each street, so we know if we're going uphill or downhill. So I wasn't looking for any engineering involved, just an elevation of the street.
You willing to do that? Buy that?
It doesn't sound like.
Wouldn't that be required anyway? Most lines get shot from the street.
Most of them, not all the way up to Pleasant Street, but the road right in front of them, especially since he's gonna be raising the grade, yes, those are required for the septic plan. So they say 95% of what I asked for was already included in the septic plan anyway. It's just a couple more elevations out on Pleasant Street. So
Is there any way he can go ahead with that septic plan? Even, for example, if he builds the septic system, it's going to be sort of above ground, it's going to be up, which
above ground,
which
yes.
means water is going to go, it's going to go somewhere else,
We're displacing one.
and it's going to go somewhere else. So can he actually have a septic system put in without addressing where that water is going to go? I mean, what's his responsibility as far as the water on his property is going to go somewhere?
So to answer your question, and Tom can jump in, is yes, he has every right in the world to send a septic system on that property. Title V encourages it. So through displacement, he will alleviate some of his water problem. He has told me directly, I don't want to create problems for my neighbors by putting a septic system in. If we can use this as an opportunity to fix the problem, so be it. But he wants other people to jump on board and say, bear some of the costs. I don't think that's an unreasonable request. I just don't know who mediates that. They're not our roads. No association, they're not town roads. Who mediates that?
And past history is, leave my turf alone, just keep the roads open. Don't want the town taking our streets, don't want the town doing anything. This is our private little area, quite frankly. When a vehicle drives down one of those streets, everybody that's around looks around because it's wondering like, who is this and where are they going? It's kind of a little secure area, so to speak. And I understand that neighborhood village approach and all that. But when we're dealing with this kind of problem, I know before we had that meeting with all those angry residents, there was talk about we looked at layouts that we had in the Board of Assessors office. And in all honesty, I mean, the streets are very narrow. Some of them are like, I'll give you one car. If you meet another one, somebody's gonna pull over or something. But the lots were so small that if the town were ever to do that, you'd be taking buildings. You would have situations where you came out the front steps, you might be standing on the road. You might have, you don't take the building down, but there's no place to put a septic because you just took that as part of it. Nothing is uniform. It just seems, it just appears that when Dighton Rock Park burned down, the landowner decides he's going to have a summer colony cottages. Well, we know that the year-round homes and everything else down there. So it was all done without zoning, without, water health regulations and all that other stuff. So what years ago turned out to be too much light, noisy, and animals running loose, and all of this turned into a situation which we address that problem as far as the animals and the light and all that other good stuff. But now we have a situation where a person has to wear waders to enter his property, come out of his house to get in his vehicle, and he needs a septic system, and yet nobody, in other words, I think the attitude is it's his problem until he builds that septic system and that water goes somewhere else. Then the next one's going to be saying, hey, there's a problem. So
maybe I'm overreaching, but I just thought that this would be an opportunity to unite some of the people and figure out some resolve in some way, shape, or form. I agree it has to be a hybrid discussion between the town and the residents, but you know, what's the alternative? If things don't get mediated down there, the fire chief and I have discussed already, is it safe for people to be in those buildings? And that's the next discussion that we're gonna have, is can I even allow anyone to live in a building that's surrounded by water? And now I need to be forced into a situation where I take someone from someone's home. That's not a road I wanna go down.
I'm wondering if we could open the door for a meeting, a public meeting, to discuss this problem and related problems, and invite the residents to come. Hey, maybe we'll have it on the football field out there. Just so that they understand what we're dealing with, to see if anyone is willing, or they think it's a good idea to have a homeowners association. They all seem to rally when they think their rights are going to be affected. You're going to take our streets or what? By the same token, it doesn't have the same feel as, hey, it's our neighborhood. We need to do something about it. What can we do that's not going to cost us all a fortune, but we can resolve the problem, which is really what we're trying to do, is resolve the problem.
Okay, so let's play out this scenario. Let's presume that meeting goes off in a positive manner, and the homeowners or a group of them agree to put the infrastructure in place to alleviate the retention of the water. Is the town going to be willing to put the infrastructure we need to put in place at taxpayers' expense in order to get it from point A to point B? I'm asking that question.
Well, you also need an easement galore to do it all on private property.
No, we're not doing it. We're not doing it. We will work directly in the public layout, and the homeowners who now agree after this meeting will hire their own contracting company to put the infrastructure in place on private property, which they all own, and connect into our town infrastructure, which gets it into the marsh. Is that something the town would be willing to do?
Well, Tom, isn't that similar to what we did in North Dayton at the plant? But we had to have an easement and all of that. Tom did some drainage work up at Mount Hope from, was that Summer Street?
Yeah, it's all my water though, except for the backyards of Bailey, Bailey's. Oh, there's a trench behind all the houses of Bailey's that flow into that. Correct.
I think legal documents could be drawn that would allow that to happen. Town work for the benefit of the town, connecting this to the town's drainage system, I'll call it. I think that the big roadblock would be the residents, but again, think it positive. They said yes. If they were to say yes, we now have the basis for a minimum maintenance bylaw, because there would have to be agreement about some kind of contribution or whatever, and it could be based on other towns' bylaws and the state law that talks about the contribution. They could still have their private little roads and all that other stuff, but that would be the basis for a minimum maintenance bylaw, and we could spell out exactly what the town is required to do, what their obligation would be, And even without a homeowners association, each individual property owner would have to agree, all right? Because if everybody agrees here, but the one in the middle here that goes by there, well, that's a problem. But that's what I read when I looked up and researched trying to do this. So I guess now we're waiting to hear from the engineer who's doing the septic. Is that what we're waiting for, to get some information?
Well, as far as I was concerned, they'll at least give us some elevation to know what we're talking about there. Just another puzzle piece we know is gonna be put on the table. Doesn't stop us from doing any other work, it's just more information to have, that's all.
Okay.
And with the site conditions, I don't think the perk tests are gonna happen anytime soon. It's gonna be a few weeks down the road. We have weather like this, it could be as early as a couple weeks from now, but once we get some rain, you're back to square one. So it's complicated.
Once you can do a perk test, does that tell you how tall this thing is going to be? Because you can't really go down too far, right?
Yes. It will be completely above grade.
Will it?
The time he clears it, I think all of them, except for his basement.
Except he's got a garage that's falling down and he wants to rebuild, but it's right now it's in the water. So that would alleviate most of this concern, yes. But there are other concerns that need to be addressed. And let's not forget, with climate change, regardless of why it's here, this is only going to get worse before this thing floods the neighbors across the street on the water side. So this is not going away. This isn't like, this will miraculously just fix itself. It's not going to.
It's a temporary solution.
And then the fire chief and I would be forced with taking multiple people out of their homes. That's not right. So I think we have to address this.
Okay.
I would.
10's not bad.
Jeez. Does anybody else have anything? If not, we're going to keep this on the agenda for the next meeting, because we're going to keep it on the agenda like we've done a number of things. And each month or at each meeting, we'll say, is there anything new on 170 Beach Street, until we get any information, whether it's the septic or what Mr. Pilling's looking for or anything else. We may hear from the residents, because the minute you show up down there, and we were there in force today, walking around looking, they're going to be communicating about what's the town up to now, or what's going to happen.
That's why I wore my high vis today.
Okay.
Ross. Beausoleil. Ross Beausoleil. Don't ask me to spell the last name.
I've got it downstairs if you need it back. So he is gonna call tomorrow morning, I'm pretty sure. So when he does, I'm just telling him that we're waiting on Proline's.
I'd like to talk to him. Okay, don't mind.
Yeah, but the general answer is the committee is waiting, but obviously Mr. Aguirre is going to talk to him. I don't know how friendly the neighbors are down there, but maybe he could talk to some neighbors too. It's a mess. No question about that. No, we aren't going to table. We're going to continue to the next. We'll just keep it on the agenda, like all of this stuff we've got here. These are just reminders to ask if anything's happening with any of the projects, so they don't fall through the cracks. So I guess we can move on to 6C, update on Borrego Sola. Does anybody have anything? Has anybody heard from them?
Yes. I've had multiple interactions with them. I am in receipt of the stormwater bond, which I didn't have a chance to print off for Roz, but I'll make sure that she has it. We are still missing the as-built plans, which Todd and I plan to co-author an email requesting those. And there's one other issue with some of the storm water infrastructure that Todd wants to address.
Some possible silt in the basins. They were underwater when we were there, so we couldn't see if the silt can clean that up.
So
Is this Elm Street 1 or Elm Street 2 or both? Elm Street 1 is the one you enter. It's the newest one.
correct.
The one in the back, okay.
So it sounds like if they address the questions, concerns from Todd and I, and they get us the as-built plans, we may be able to close this out at the next meeting.
Okay,
So, thank you.
okay. This isn't stormwater, but I don't know what happened to the gentleman I'm dealing with relative to the pilot agreement, but he hasn't responded to me. So I got in touch with him in February and told him to just get back to me with the agreement we submitted, not the one he proposed. So that wouldn't affect the building of it. But anyhow. 6D, update on Bristol Aggie. Oh, I'm sorry. How could I forget them? Shame, shame, shame. I'm bad. All right. I'm sorry. 6B, update on Brook Street Solar license agreement. Well, I looked at that and I said, I checked it off and thought, oh, that's me. That's done.
Told you.
Sorry, guys. Attorney Costa drafted an agreement and he sent it to me. I shared it with Tom and Todd, Chief McGee, and Mr. Aguirre. And the only feedback I got was from Mr. Ferry, and it concerned language to be added that included when the project is absolutely positively over and the land is, everything's removed, it's decommissioned, the land is returned to as near as its original condition as possible, the license agreement will require that the culvert, or the little bridge as we call it, gets removed, because we are not going to make, the town is not going to make that property accessible to somebody who might want to build homes or anything else. Anyone else wishing to cross town property to enter that is going to have to go through the same kind of process that this solar farm is. And it's certainly not our intent to have that access so that people can go up along Audrey Lane, and that's a whole nother issue. So the language was that the culvert will be removed, the ditch, the ditch and the maintenance of it that is being done by the solar developer, that maintenance and that wooden guardrail that's going to be installed on Brook Street. The maintenance of the ditch and the guardrail will be the town of Dayton, because obviously it'll be ours, and those will obviously, the ditch is going to stay there, and so is the guardrail. So what else did we have, Mr. Ferry? Oh, signage. This was a good point. If you don't know the area and you're flying down Pine Street and don't realize you've got a square turn, if you saw that culvert, you might think that road continued on, even if there's a gate or anything. So there will be appropriate signage indicating that you got to make a sharp left, that entrance is private property, authorized vehicles only, so forth and so on. So there'll be something to really jog the attention, I hope, of anyone driving on that street that's not familiar with it. And so they won't be trying to drive straight ahead. Mr. Ferry, what else was there? Really, Mr. Ferry. So anyhow, I talked to Chief McGee. He said everything looked okay. I had questions about the Knox boxes, and that he's all set with that. He was all set with the staging area. He was happy that the little bridge, the culvert, will be 20 feet. And so everything else, including the proposed additions, he was happy with that. So sent it back to Matt. I'm hoping to have it any time. I'll send it off to Ahmed, I think it's Ahmed Caleb. He's the man who was chomping at the bit to start work there. And I told him that can't happen until the Board of Selectmen approves that license. So it's going to go to him next for his attorney. And then when it comes back, it'll go to the Board of Selectmen for review and hopefully approval. And then once that happens, the appropriate people will get copies, and then you can proceed with the kind of permits and things that you have to do. Okay?
I have one comment, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Seeing as we have a planning board member here, I'd like to use this opportunity to encourage the planning board in the future to try not to allow the culvert and the street to line up, because it creates problems such as we're discussing today. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Ferry, but box culverts can be cast on an angle. So they could have used an angled culvert to enter that space, and that would have done two things. It would have reduced the turning entrance requirement for the fire department, and would have eliminated Pine Street and the entrance to the solar array from lining up.
Not in code in particular, I think you want to point out any type of roadways or driveways lined up with something across the street.
Right, but in this particular case, a box culvert was required. I've seen them cast on an angle, so I know they can be
Skewed, right?
skewed, right? So in the future, if you bring that back to your body, that we could try and do that, that would have eliminated this whole quagmire.
So noted.
Thank you.
Did you have anything else, Mr. Ferry? Okay. The only other thing I would say was that my comment to Attorney Costa was, in these proposed additions to this agreement, any and every possible liability that could arise is going to fall to the developer of this project, that the town of Dayton will be held totally harmless for anything relative to the guardrail, the ditch, or the culvert until such time as the culvert's removed and the town of Dayton actually assumes control and maintenance of the ditch and the fence. Other than that, we're not going to be responsible for anything that happens down there. And that's another reason why we want to restrict access, because we don't want hikers going down there. We don't want hunters going down there or going onto that property. So does anyone have anything else on Brook Street? If not, we can now go to D and update on the Aggie School.
Sure. So I'm sure everyone's aware that the new CSE building is now occupied.
What does CSE stand for?
Student Commons, right? Student Commons Educational Building?
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
Wait a minute. Science Center,
Science Center, sorry,
something.
yeah.
The Student Commons is the one across, is the wooden, I call it the wooden building that came from Canada.
Science Center building?
Yeah, a big tall one. I forgot about the acronym issue with virtual meetings, thank you. So that said, the work has begun on the original building, the original structure, which has gone through major renovations. In the interim, they're still working with the sewer department to get the overflow tank approved. It's my understanding that it has not been approved yet, which is still outstanding. So I intend to withhold any new occupancies until that's done. I believe that there's a little back and forth between sewer and the engineers now.
On that in particular, we were supposed to have a meeting yesterday. The meeting was canceled. Solar Commission meeting was canceled because there was no information or an update from the Aggie at this time. Our engineer and their engineer are still working out. So nothing is moving forward for that yet.
Okay. Aside from that, I haven't seen any stormwater concerns. I haven't seen any siltation runoff into the roadways. I know Todd has spoken to them in the past about making sure that they use the appropriate trap rock and whatnot. So I haven't seen any. I know rainy season is coming up, so Todd and I will keep an eye on it. If any other member of the Stormwater Committee or town officials see anything of the sorts, let us know so we can get on them right away before it ends up in the North River.
Are there any students in Gilbert Hall?
No.
So they're all across the street. Are any students crossing the street, by the way?
Yes.
Oh, there are.
Yes.
Oh, the machine shop,
Yeah.
that's
Sorry,
still,
The ag agricultural mechanical building and the horticultural building is still being used. And I don't know the name of what's the tree cutting program?
oh,
Arbor,
culture.
okay. That is still being used. That is 100% complete.
So it's the main part of the original old building, the long building. Okay.
So you don't know that it's all, so you don't know the people coming on safely.
Yes. Yes, I watched them.
Quite a feat.
I watched them this morning.
Okay.
On a different note, the cafeteria is supposed to be ready to open fairly soon, but because of the mile of plexiglass they have in their current cafeteria, they're hesitant to go and screw in all that plexiglass into the brand new building, so they might be pushing back when they move into the cafeteria. Based on, unless the governor's orders changes with phase 4 or whatever, because it's a lot of work to get in there for a month of school, so.
So are they still using Keith Hall?
Yes.
They're hoping to reopen the tent this week, I believe, actually, there should be.
I was
a
gonna
tent
say
today.
the outside dining would probably be coming.
They don't have enough capacity for all the students in the cafeteria, so they need extra space, so, yeah.
Just so you're aware, if they don't rectify the sewer department's requirements for the holding tank, I'm not going to issue a occupancy for that building. So that will be delayed until they rectify their issues.
Has anybody heard anything about the composting toilets since you're talking about wastewater? Because that's got nothing to do with the sewer system per se, right?
I don't know if it was mine, and I don't think it's ever been mine, because we still got to come with real fixes.
Right. To answer your question, they are online. And Agent Pilling and I are supposed to go for a show and tell one day. We just haven't got around to it.
We have them add some signs so people know what they can't flush and stuff like that, because there's certain things that don't belong in a composting toilet. So,
Okay, but so they're operational.
Correct.
The directional handles, one flush, number one, you know what I mean?
No, they don't use water.
Really?
yeah, dry toilet.
Dry toilets.
That's right.
I think we'll all want to see this.
So when I said flush, I used the wrong
Yeah.
word, yeah.
I didn't see that myself.
And
Well,
it's,
I'm assuming
They
there'll be
use
a,
that paper to,
that'd be-
DEM, like if you go to any of those DEM parks, or whatever, they're all enforceable.
so if you do a search on composting toilets, you'll find out how they work. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, no, what I'm saying is DEM uses compostable toilets at all their parks, or at least most of them that I know.
Okay,
So Beaver Tail and Jamestown.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
see,
Do we have anything else on the Aggie School? Anybody have any questions or anything? Okay, then we'll move on to 6E, Audubon bylaw review.
We actually did get the bylaw review from Danica.
Okay,
I didn't print it out to everybody, it's 48 pages. So I don't know if we just, anybody wants one, I'll be happy to print it out, but
Right, but some people may want to look at it by PDF, so however you want it, that's how we get it.
okay. Mrs. Grassi, if you check with Mrs. Brady, tell her that this report is available, that we will send it to her, or she can give us a list of names. I would think it needs to go to the bylaw committee, because I don't know if they gave us feedback or not, but since this is a review of our bylaws, I would hope they'll at least look at it. And it should go to the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator. With a date, we want, if anyone's going to comment, we need it by, let's say, give them, I don't know, 20 days, 30 days, whatever. But the point is, we got to get back to Audubon, because they've done the work. I mean, it's been delayed, not through any intentional actions, but we'll just offer it to bylaw committee, Board of Selectmen, town administrator, and say, this is it. We've got to get back to Audubon, and they're expecting us to do something with this. This was not a practice run on how to review bylaws.
So do you want me to send it to Karen and ask her to send it to them, or do you want me to send it to them and CC Karen?
You can send it to Karen in PDF form.
Okay.
And let them know, that's who we think it should go to. We think it should go to the selectmen, and like I say, bylaw committee, whatever. But also, we will have a public announcement that this is available. And if anybody would like to see it, they should get in touch with, give their address to Mrs. Brady, and it can be sent to them.
Okay, do you want to come up with how long we need comments by, or do you want the,
What do you think's a reasonable time? I don't want this thing held up forever and ever and a day. Is 20 days too short?
yeah, I got,
30 days?
I don't have copies for everybody, I just have what you handed out last time. So,
Okay. Roz, Tom is saying 30 days is reasonable.
okay. So April. The 9th is a Friday. Do you want to give until the following Monday, the 12th?
Okay. Okay, we are just about at 2 o'clock. Have we heard from is anybody going to be coming in from Clear Lake?
Tom Daniels is here.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
here. I'm sorry. I think there was an issue with the link. I'm trying to get the right info to the rest of the team. They will be on as well, though.
You want a few minutes, Tom?
If we could, we tried plugging in the number that was on the agenda, and it didn't seem like that was working. So we had to go to the website directly. But
Okay, all right. Well, when you're ready, just give me a heads up that you've got your reps there. In the meantime, we'll just continue on with the agenda. Do we have anything for our 6F, update on status of subdivision stormwater structure inventory?
That would be Jim.
Okay,
I think he's making copies.
okay, all right. So we'll come back to that one then. I'll just put a hold on that. G, develop a standard format for the planning/zoning boards to inform the Stormwater Committee and make them aware prior to roadway acceptances. Did we have any kind of a draft of that? I know we mentioned it, but I don't know if any work's been done on it.
We didn't.
Okay, so let's keep it on the list. You haven't seen anything, Mr. Rhines.
No, they'll be included in the sheet you gave out last month for the checklist. We could include that.
Oh, we could throw it in there with the top.
Include that, so-
We just want to make sure we get plenty of advance warning so that we can hash everything up before they get to that point. That's all.
Okay, so this will be on next month or next regular meeting agenda, just as a reminder. If we have anything, we'll discuss it then. Number 6H, discuss fortification of stormwater infrastructure. Do we have anything on that?
No.
Okay, so that's a placeholder, Mrs. Grassi.
Okay.
This is 6I, stormwater messages. This was septic systems and dog owners. We were going to have something that the town clerk could give out with renewals or new licenses or anything like that to remind people. Have we got anything in print yet or any drafts? All right, I'll put that one on the agenda as a placeholder. Mr. Agia, we haven't started the public hearing yet. We're waiting until everyone is ready. So we can go back to 6F, update on status of subdivision stormwater structure inventory.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Sorry I didn't have the date earlier. So as you know from last time, I put this together. I asked the committee for their comments, approvals, dissension, whatever you had. I made a couple of minor changes since that day, which I just handed out to you. It was basically just format. adding and taking away a little bit here just to make the document a little more fluid. I didn't know if any other committee had a chance to take, committee members had a chance to take a look at it. I'd just like to know what you think about it.
I personally haven't been in the no offense, but not anytime.
The only thing that Tom Byers, the only thing I think I see should be added, on some of these, and just, we had a recent one, that the town takes care of the roadway, sidewalk to sidewalk, so who does the sidewalk? Snow removal. So we probably should add roadway or sidewalk.
So in snow and ice removal, break it down further to roadways and sidewalks?
Yeah.
So we wait for the next week.
Thank you, Tom.
Welcome.
The only concern is you almost have to mention what areas you're talking about, because we don't have a bylaw that requires it to happen on town-owned sidewalks.
Right, on an inspection of a subdivision, that's what this is for.
Right.
And it's a deficiency notice. This form will tell you who your contact person is.
All right, okay.
Right.
I just, Mr. Ferry, I just don't want anyone from whom we negotiated an easement to feel obligated. Well, only because of what you said. And by the way, Mr. Ferry, March is the month of the woman, but I don't think the intent was that snow removal on sidewalks is supposed to be handled by women. I will just state that. So that's why I don't want this person that we negotiated an easement from, the lady of the house, to feel like she's got to shovel that sidewalk.
So aside from Mr. Pyer's comment, if nobody has any other comments, I thought it would be a good idea for one, two of us to go out to a subdivision and just do a mock, fill it out, see if it works, flows. One thing looking at it at your desk is another thing going out to the field and seeing if it works. And then we could come back one more meeting and maybe finalize it and approve it if everybody likes it.
What's a grit chamber?
It's a 1,500 gallon tank, 2,000 gallon tank. It's underground. It looks like a septic tank. But when you go in the first compartment, the wall is high, so the oil stays in that one. And then the second compartment catches grit, and then the third one is just in case, and then the water flows out.
What oil? From the roads?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
It's
so,
coming to a catch basin. Yes.
okay, all right,
Well, it's oil, scum, trash that floats, anything that would be at the top.
all right, okay, all right, I understand. Rain garden is 2 words. That just needs to be made, rain garden. That's 2 words. It's not one together.
Should we add maintenance of fence, if there is a fence around the ponds?
I do have it on there. It's
I
up
see it on
here.
the right condition of,
Condition of fence.
I think you're talking about the maintenance list at the bottom.
Oh, added to
Should
the
be down
maintenance
there.
list? Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I would think any basin that's fenced, maintenance of the basin has got to include the fence.
Yeah, but sometimes spelling it out as a separate item can be helpful.
Oh, I don't object to that. Okay, so location of. We have detention and we have infiltration. What about retention basins? Because somewhere out there we got those too, so we probably should add retention basins.
Well, a retention basin is a surface infiltration basin. So it's either surface or subsurface, but infiltration is retention.
But thinking of the stormwater bylaw, we have definitions for all 3. So all I'm saying is, if you want to say retention / infiltration, since it's part of our bylaw and we added that as an amendment, I think we ought to just reference so that somebody doesn't say, well, the bylaw talks about retention. Where does that fall in here? That's all I'm saying.
You have those notes? You can share with
No,
me?
but you're down under the maintenance. If you go up to above the location of.
Location
it
of.
only says infiltration.
Okay.
And those three definitions came about because initially, at least when I came on the board, I believe there was a big to-do about subsurface drainage things and mosquitoes and
Right?
all that other stuff. And,
We got into that earlier.
yeah. Does anybody else have anything on this maintenance form? If not, I guess we're all set.
All right, everyone from Clearway is in attendance. That is planning on attendance.
Okay, Tom, are you ready?
I think Dan.
Dan?
Yes, we're ready. Thank you for your patience with us.
Okay, all right, so we will now go back to agenda item 4, public hearing, Clearway Energy, 1420-1522 William Street Solar.
You guys all
Madam Chair,
Yes,
Tom Pires speaking. For the record, I will recuse myself at this time since a relative abuts the project on William Street.
okay, so noted. Dan, do you wish to start?
Sure, I'm actually going to hand it off to Tom, and he's going to walk us through an update on where we're at in our design changes and responses to the Stormwater Committee's concerns.
Okay, would you just have each person there state their name and their title so we have it for the record, please?
Sure, this is Dan Von Allman. I am the Development Project Manager at Clearway Energy.
I am Tom Daniels with TRC. I'm the project manager and owner's rep for Clearway on this project.
Hi, Tim Sullivan, also with TRC. I'm supporting the permitting efforts on the project for Clearway.
Anyone else?
And this is Chris Rokas with Meridian Associates, helping out with the civil design.
All right, if everybody would be so kind as to rename yourself so you can put TRC or whatever your company name is after, since this is the recorded video, make it easy for everybody at home to know who you are.
Mrs. Grassi, do you have all those names? Okay, Mr. Pires recused himself, so we're just going to go around one more time so that Clearway knows who's here from the Stormwater Committee. So, Mrs. Grassi, I'll start with you.
Filling Stormwater Agent.
James IDR building official.
Tom Perry, Superintendent of Streets.
Conservation Commission.
Timothy F. Ryan, planning board chairman.
Lisa California Conservation Agent.
And Nancy Goulart, a Board of Selectmen. Okay, Tom Daniels, I guess you're up next.
Great, thank you. So following our last appearance in front of the Stormwater Committee, we were granted the opportunity to have a second call with Mr. Pilling to, in more detail, go over the comments that we had received, our initial responses, and then talk in more detail, technical detail, and kind of what we were thinking on our approach and how we should move forward. So what we've provided prior to this meeting, is not a full updated design, which is currently in progress. We took, our notes from the meeting with Mr. Pilling, and we provided updated comments that show our intent and how we will address them. Big picture items is we are revisiting the stormwater design completely, and we have provided a preliminary drainage area map that we believe addresses the comments that we've received to date. We're also taking some proactive steps to revamp the design a little bit and kind of account for the worst case scenario. So we are proposing to do more test pitting once we can get out there and check depth of seasonal groundwater. But in the meantime, we are going to, revise the design to account for a shallower groundwater table, which is anticipated. The design will also be updated to widen the road to 20 feet in all areas that we can without impacting the sensitive natural resources that abut the project. And we are looking at additional stormwater infrastructure to more fully meet the town of Dayton's stormwater requirements, as well as the comments we've received. And then going through the list, we provided, again, more itemized responses to each of the, I believe, how many questions? 15 comments that we've received today from the Stormwater Committee.
Are you through?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. Does anyone else wish to speak before I ask committee members to speak? Is there anything more to the presentation?
I think, our overall, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the only thing we wanted to make clear is that we're not requesting any approvals today, or, understanding that we provided the response letter on Wednesday of last week. Would certainly understand if the town is not prepared to make a real-time response to the updated map or comments. We wanted to take this opportunity, since we're on the agenda, to provide an update on the new path forward, and just continue the dialogue with the town to make sure we're headed in the right direction.
Okay. Any committee members wish to comment or questions or anything relative? I realize that you probably just got this document. So, Mr. Pilling, do you have anything?
I will say that the conversation we had was only a few of us. I guess it was February 18th when we had it. Yes. They were very friendly and agreeable to it, and part of it was the way that it was phrased by my letter. I guess it was still some clarity, but everything's been resolved now, and everything's going in the right direction.
Mr. Agia, do you have anything?
I agree. I sat in on that meeting with AD Filling, and it was very positive. The only thing that I'll add to the rest of the committee that was shared with the design team at that time is respective of number 2, which is the roadway width applied to hop access. The fire chief has confirmed that the minimum width that he would allow in any wetland area would be 16 feet, 1/6. He doesn't want it any narrower than that, and that will only be for short distances. So I think that needs to be, and the design team is aware of that. I just want Mrs. Caledoni to be aware of that. Okay?
Will that work for conservation?
That will work, but in the orders specifically requires that any changes come before the commission. So we want them to file for amended orders. So that would need to happen as well.
Mr. Ferry? Nothing? Mr. Fournette, anything? No. Mr. Rhines?
Not this time.
I do have another question.
Go ahead.
On the original application, it was not checked that work would be done in any ORW. However, the project, a large portion of the project is within an ORW. Am I correct?
Because we're on camera, ORW stands for
Outstanding Resource Waters.
Specifically, what does that mean?
That means that wetland that runs through that site, and you can see on the watershed map that they submitted to us, the last page of that lengthy response shows a watershed map. And if you look at the mapping, Mass GIS has, you can see that this site is within an outstanding resource waters, meaning that any spill within wetlands or waters connecting to that wetland or water, it's all connected to our drinking water surface.
so outstanding resource water.
Protected
It's like a water body that has a higher significance, like a
Right.
shellfish beach or a drinking water supply or tributary or something like that. Something with a higher quality to it than just a regular run of the mill.
So the quality standards are higher, so they'd have to submit a 401 water quality submission as well. So that would be, not through the town would review that, but that's 401 water quality. So it's the state and the federal permit they need.
Okay.
Would that then trip an ENF?
Possibly, I guess that's for them to figure out, right?
Environmental
Yeah.
notification form.
ENF.
See why we clarify our acronyms?
Yeah.
Hi, this is Tim Sullivan with TRC. I'm actually not able to see the video feed, so I'm not sure I'm completely following the conversation. There are some areas of outstanding resource water adjacent to the site. I think we've talked about it in some cases where we talked about the overhead line that was originally in the in the project. It is now been taken out. I think it would be helpful for maybe myself and Miss Caledonia to get on maybe a video share where we can show the plans and kind of see which areas are being discussed specifically.
Well, there's an outline on last GIS you could overlay on your plan.
Yeah, but what he's referring to is they originally had a power line going right through the wetland and
Correct.
across the tributary line. They removed that.
Right.
So that's not there.
Okay.
So I still think they are doing some tree clearing in the ORW buffer. But that's what I think they're looking for clarification. But I think you're also concerned with where we're going between the wetlands there when we widen the road for the fire department.
Correct.
And maybe doing wetland filling,
Right.
which is where the water quality start and all the rest of it comes in. I think that's where
Yeah, definitely. Exactly. I was just confused also as to why the application was not correct. If you look at the original notice of intent application, it wasn't correct. Number 5 on page 7 of the notice of intent. You guys don't have a copy of it, but I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
microphone will pick you up.
Okay. The Mass DEP Wetlands Protection Act Form 3 notice of intent that they filed with us a few years, 3 years back, right? So page 7, if they have a copy, they can see number 5 was not correctly submitted to the Conservation Commission. August 2017 was their filing.
And I think a lot of the people that are involved in us now are not the original people, so they may not have answers to those questions.
True. Just wanted to bring that.
Yeah, I can take that. I can take that as a review item and I'll follow up Ms. Caledonia if I have any questions on, make sure I'm looking at the same items you're looking at.
Great, sounds good. Also, I know that if COVID hadn't happened, your orders would have expired. So you do have 1 year from, I believe, February 16th. And additionally, the orders have never been recorded. But at this point, if you're coming in for amended orders,
You haven't started work.
yeah, and you haven't started work, then that's not necessary at this point.
They have been recorded. I can get you the information.
Yeah, if you could forward that one page and put it in the chat right here, that would be great.
When we did the site visit, there were areas where flags should have been that weren't there. And the question was whether or not flags would be replaced or new ones would be, whatever. What's the status of that?
Those flags have been replaced. That was unfortunately buried at the end of the first response that we had provided some photos of the work that Meridian's team went out and did there. But yeah, those flags have been reinstalled.
So they were rehung, they weren't redelineated.
Yeah, correct. They were rehung at the same boundaries that were previously delineated.
So they just surveyed, put them back up where they were originally located, however many years ago now. They just hung them back where they were. They didn't see if the line moved. They
That
just-
would have been 4 years.
So my line's only good for 3 years, so
Right.
obviously we still have to go take a look at it, the line, and see if it's still accurate and if it needs to be adjusted at this point.
Okay,
So
so that,
wetlands do change.
Yeah,
okay, so that's something that you will take a look at?
well, quite frankly, I mean, the commission had a consultant, a peer review consultant on this, so when they refile that, I think we'll try to do all that.
But eventually, it's going to be looked at
It
again.
needs to be, yeah.
But they
Okay,
don't need to file a new ANRAD or anything like that. We can work it all into the notes of intent.
Right.
does anybody else have anything on this, next steps, whatever? What's the next thing we're expecting? We have this document here with answers. So what is the next step for the town and what is the next step for the developer?
Well, this email, if you read the front of it, they're looking for me to confirm that the watershed areas and kinds of concentrations and the path that they're going to take is okay with me before they start redesigning the entire drainage calculations of the watershed. So as soon as I get a chance to look at that, that'll give them that okay on their end.
Yeah, and they need to file for amended,
Speak up.
they need to file the revised change, the new plan with conservation and request amended orders. And we'll take it from there.
Okay,
Right.
and
I was just gonna say, to add a little more clarity, so the stormwater design and modeling and assessment is definitely a critical path, and it's gonna impact all the future coordination with the various town boards that we do. So, we're front loading that in our schedule, and then once we have the path forward, we will start reaching out to the various department heads to make sure, all the needs are being met and everything's streamlined as much as possible.
okay, so everyone understands what the next steps are that they've got to take. Is there anything else we need to discuss today? Anything from Daniel, from you or anyone on your team?
One housekeeping note, and Todd, I can follow up with you offline. I must have taken down the abutter, Mr. Chrysopolis' email address wrong because my attempt to share the electronic plans got bounced back. So I'll follow up with you to make sure I have his correct contact information. And then just looking ahead, I think if we can get a confirmation in the next week on the watershed boundaries and time of concentration file that was provided, we would be in a position to have a kind of full site redesign and stormwater report ready to share with the committee in about a month from today. That's kind of the timeline that Meridian has provided to us. So I just wanted to put that out there in terms of, whether we need to get on an agenda for our next meeting, that we're planning to be ready to share that with the committee at that time.
No, I would agree with that. That makes sense.
Does that work for
And that
everyone?
should give them time to deal with whatever paperwork they need for the Conservation Commission too. So, yep.
Okay. Is there anything else that we need to discuss? I realize we're going to lose a couple of members to meetings that they've got scheduled. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to continue the hearing.
We need a date. Tom,
So when we have our next stormwater meeting, if Tuesday's better for you than Wednesdays, usually Wednesdays are better.
So with that, so right now, if you go a month out, April 6th is a Tuesday. April 7th is a department head meeting at 10 in the morning. The week after, it doesn't look like there's any, the selectmen, when do you meet on the 7th, probably? Is that the first Wednesday of the month?
We usually meet the second.
Which would be the 14th, so Would you rather do the 6th? Would that make more sense? I don't think you want to do it the same day as the department head, I'm assuming.
No, they'd probably run together. That wouldn't work. April 6th, does that work for everybody? 1 o'clock? It's Tuesday.
April 6th.
Dan, does that work for
Nobody's made the
your,
motion yet.
April 6th, does that work for you? I know you said you were looking at maybe 30 days time.
Yep.
April 6th, is that,
Yeah, we'll make that work.
April 6th at 1 o'clock?
All right, I'll make a motion. We continue the public hearing until April 6th at 2 o'clock for them. 1 o'clock would be when the meeting starts.
All right. Who seconded that? Mr. Rhines. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, roll call. Mr. Aguirre?
Aye.
Mr. Pilling?
Aye.
Mr. Perry?
Aye.
Mr. Burnett? Mr. Rhines?
Aye.
Mrs. Goulart, aye.
And-
Okay,
And we have one.
well, he's not, he's out of this.
Okay, no, I can try. Want to make sure it's in the minute that way, that's all.
So I think we're all set. Okay, so we'll be seeing you visually or audio wise in about a month, okay? Dan?
Very good. Thank you.
All right, thank you all.
We are hoping that the selectmen are going to be discussing tomorrow night, that we're going to go back to live in-person meetings. So, and hopefully here in Massachusetts, March 22nd, we're looking to go to phase 4, which would open everything up a lot more. So that's our hope.
But we'll
Excellent.
still be able to accommodate video if, obviously, if they can't get here or choose not to come. Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you
Thanks
all.
all.
All right, thanks, yep.
Okay. Returning to the agenda, 6J, Hunters Hill Development. Any updates on Hunters Hill?
That's it, planning board's heard nothing so far in regards to that. We don't know if anybody's gone in there, we don't know if the purchase sales agreement's been done and finished, we don't know. We've heard nothing, honestly.
I've had one discussion with the developer. They are going to work with the Conservation Commission because 10, 15 years have passed.
16.
Since they got everything out there.
Lines are all gone and everything. Yeah.
They did tell me that the magic number is 100 lots. They cannot move forward with this unless they get 100 lots.
100 new lots?
100 They have 106 right now. So.
New one.
Yes, new lots, yes. So if conservation, if the conservation diligence and filing reduces that number, they're gonna go back to planning to put lots elsewhere, because 100 is the number in order to make it work mathematically, or else we won't get a finished subdivision. So.
Okay, and how many, does anybody, exactly, how many are finished right now?
35.
Okay,
So that would bring the total to 135. They have 106 approved right now, correct? Okay. They're willing, they'd like to stay with the 106, but if the wetlands delineations affect that, they need to find lots somewhere. They need to get to 100.
okay.
Well,
They have plenty of land.
Yeah, they do, because the golf course wasn't happening.
Right. So they have plenty of land, but it would need to go back to planning.
But in the decision, it was rendered that that land would be put set aside for conservation purposes, so.
Which is why, if there might be a swapping of land where the wetlands are now, uplands would become house lots, so I'm just letting everyone know, that's the discussion.
And if I can just throw in, I did also talk to the engineer, and I said to him, as far as stormwater is concerned, we would test it so they get drainage basins. Because they've got drainage basins that are 9 to 11 feet below ground, and water table in that area is historically around 2 feet. So the basin would have 9 feet of water in it, which isn't going to work all that well. Originally, they were supposed to be irrigation ponds to take water to water the golf course, but now they don't have a golf course. So now they have to change the style of basin. I'm not saying they can't be wet. They just may have to, irrigation pond does not fit into stormwater definition under the new stormwater regs that have gone into effect since they started the project. So They may have to do some tweaking there, and that may, the basement, instead of being this big and this deep, may go to this, and so they may have to shift lots around for that reason.
Okay, so from an environmental standpoint, they're gonna start over?
Not a start over, it's, a lot of the infrastructure's already in and stuff, they may just have to adjust.
They're required to put in a internal septic facility there before they can build
Right.
the next house, so it's not required right away, so.
So they have a permitted plan right now with planning. However, conservation is going to affect that plan. They then need to work back with planning to come up with a final design. At that point, we'll get our permit in hand and move forward with the development. It's my understanding that everyone involved, the homeowners, the planning board, conservation, all wants to see this work. We just have to do it the right way. So the homeowners are excited, the ones that I talked to about this thing finally getting possibly finished. So.
I did
Go ahead.
receive a call from a woman who lives in the existing part of Hunter's Hill. She was just asking me, what was going on as far as conservation, because they did file the notice of intent, so the abutters did get notified. The meeting is the 18th. She told me that she was hoping that the town would make sure that there wasn't water in basements, because some of her neighbors, she said she was lucky to not have water in her basement, but some of her neighbors do have water in their basement. So
Year round?
I don't know. I just wanted to make that known that you
Well,
guys.
again, the water table is historically high in that neighborhood, and I can believe that there would be houses with water.
Yeah.
So some of the water and basement issues were grading of land, direction of downspouts. There was a lot of haphazard landscaping that was done post-occupancy. So some of that stuff I've been intimately involved with homeowners trying to alleviate, and the developer so far has been fairly forthright in making the corrections that are needed. That doesn't mean that some of them aren't in water tables. Water tables have risen, and some of those permits are 2 years old, 3 years old. So it's just, it needs to get finished, and it needs to be a competent developer who takes it over. And I think we have that, so.
And I think they'll move a lot faster than the previous speed of the previous developers.
Okay, anything else on Hunter's Hill? If not, Mrs. Bassey, was there any correspondence?
Just, you would send, and I forwarded it to the board, the costly news.
Oh, yeah, that was the horror story about the cost of stormwater and everything else. No surprises there.
I'm guessing a lot of these towns, when they're doing their reports, are literally just copying the year before's and just forwarding it without actually looking at it and realizing they don't really have 2,000 catch basins in town, but that's the number that somebody wrote down and they just keep carrying it. And so I think that's part of why they get in trouble, is they haven't done anything to improve their situation.
Mhm. And probably down the road, we're gonna have to be talking to the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee, because certainly we know that some communities, stormwater fees go into a special account to fund stormwater problems, situations, whatever. So we're probably gonna be faced with that down the road. Right now, our permit fees go into estimated receipts and close out to free cash, but I think it's a matter of time. Some of them are in deeper trouble. We're not faced with that right now, but we're fortunate we don't have as much paved surfaces as, for example, the town of Foxborough. So just something to keep in mind. Is there any public input? I don't think we have any public here. If not, we'll move on to the approval of minutes. Did the February 10th minutes go out, Roz?
No, those
All right.
went just to you. They haven't been
Okay.
provided.
I'll entertain a motion to, we could do this in one motion, if somebody's willing to make the motion and mention the date specifically to approve the minutes.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the meeting minutes of December 16th, 2020, January 13th, 2020, and January 25th of 2021.
January 13th, 2021.
I'm sorry, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor? Mr. Pilling?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye.
Aye. You're back
Aye.
again. Mr. Byers. Mr. Ferry. Mr. Fournette. Mr. Fournette. You already said aye, right? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Rhines and Mrs. Goulart, aye. So our next meeting will be April the 6th. The meeting will be at 1 p.m. and we have a 2 p.m. Resumption of the public hearing for Clearway Energy. The one thing I didn't mention was on the Brook Street project, we have been referring to that as Grasshopper, I believe. Well, it's changed, and now it's a combination of letters and numbers, which you can't pronounce. I'm not sure when it changed, but in any case, since we can't pronounce it, we're probably better off just referring to it as Grasshopper Brook Street. We will make sure that by the time any documentation or papers or anything else is put together, that license agreement, we will know what name they're using at the time. And I've asked that they keep us informed if they change names again. But anyhow, okay. Is there anything else to come before the committee? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Mr. Pilling?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre? Mr. Pius? Mr. Berry? Mr. Burnett? Mr. Rhines? Mrs. Goulart, aye. Thank you, everybody.